views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most inspired visionaries on the planet in lighthearted, lively dialogue. Join us as we explore the expansive nature of reality in a down-to-earth way, offering you insights and tools, empowering you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Now, here's your host, Christine Upchurch.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the Christine Upchurch Show, where we have stellar conversations to illuminate your journey. I'm speaking to you today from Hubbard Radio on 1150 AM KKNW here in the Seattle area. You might be listening on WBLQ, AM 1230 radio in Connecticut, Rhode Island, or New York. You might be listening on one of the 35 stations in Australia or anywhere around the world on Transformation Talk Radio. Or perhaps after the fact on christineupchurch.com. But wherever and whenever you're listening from, you're going to be really glad you joined us here today because I have a special guest. And before I tell you who that is, I'm going to say hello to my better half here in the studio. I always like to leave them hanging, don't I, Benny? Mr. Benny Mathers. He does his magic behind the scenes to allow you to hear this, wonderful conversation. Good morning, Benny.
Hi there. Good day and a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest. And
it's
we
gorgeous.
love having you here on the air with us at the mighty 1150 KKNW in Seattle. Nothing more to report, really. Just doing things. Yeah, not much. Kids are out of school for a couple weeks now already since their graduation from kindergarten. I'm so proud.
Oh, they're growing up fast,
and they're,
aren't they?
So my kids definitely have my legs. Like,
right.
Somehow they look gigantic all of a sudden this last week.
Really?
Like, you know how you watch kids and they transform? You're obviously a parent, so you get it. But like this week in particular has just really caught my eye, and it's like, wow, those are my legs. So now I have to start running again because they're not stopping.
Yeah, and it's great at every stage, but with each stage, it's got both its blessings and its challenges as a parent.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna tear up. No, I'm gonna hold it back.
And yesterday I had the honor of being the guest on, I think it's called the Untethered Soul Untethered. I'll have to ask my guest because the host of that show, he's got a new show out. He had me on his show yesterday, and I have him on today, and I'm talking about the wonderful Andrew Martin. Andrew's been a guest on this show before, and he is one of these people who, like, when I tune into him energetically, when I interact with him, when I see his wonderful videos on Facebook or YouTube, I know deep down that he's got real clarity of that higher level of communication, but clarity of his purpose and who he is. And I really appreciate him, and I'm so fortunate he's here again. He's a highly attuned intuitive oracle and spiritual teacher. He had some fascinating experiences beating back, about 20 years ago, and he was suddenly awakened and on sort of the accelerated path, so to speak, of spiritual evolution here at this important time on our planet. He's got content on YouTube, as I said. He's got wonderful, wonderful videos out there, and people love to tune into his regular energy forecasts, guided meditations, and he has other transformational tools. And he holds one-on-one sessions, workshops, and he now has his own show. I'm so excited on Transformation Talk Radio, Life Untethered. There, I got it right that time because I'm looking at it here on my paper. On Thursdays, every other Thursday, noon Pacific time. I'm so grateful he's here today to talk about chaos. Andrew Martin. Good morning, Andrew.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. It seems like just yesterday we were talking with each other.
Yes. And yesterday we were having a great conversation about, those spiritual myths which bind us. And I thought it was a great conversation. I know people can listen to that in the archives. And today we are going to be talking not only about your new show, but about chaos and dealing with chaos. So, okay, this is probably a stupid question to ask, but I'm going to ask it off the bat. So why right now are you focusing on teaching about chaos?
Well, I mean, just look out the window. I think that, where the big picture is, and we've talked about this before, we are in the midst of a magnificent, massive planetary transformation. Uh-huh. This period in time, this point in time, is unlike really any other. And we are seeing illusions falling left and right. And the big picture is anything that is not really built on truth must fall, and it is falling, and we're seeing that happen on a global scale.
Right. Yes,
but,
we are.
More importantly, I think for where I come from, and I know that you probably feel the same with your own client work, is that, it's the individual level that I think so often, you can watch the news and you can read the paper and you can feel what you feel or think what you think, but you can turn that off.
Yes.
But when it's something that's occurring in your own life and within your own experience, it's really, really oftentimes so challenging and difficult. You can't really, ignore that. I mean, you can put it off. You can kick the can down the road, but at some point you got to deal with it.
Yes.
And I think that right now we are seeing another massive surge of this energy coming in, which is benevolent, loving, positive energy. It is designed to move us towards our truth. It is here to remove these illusions. Mm-hmm. And so there is a lot of chaos. There's a lot of mess. And, that's what I've been talking a lot lately about, is finding the message in the mess.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of great power in that. And it takes a certain bravery for us as individuals or collectively or as teachers to talk about and to actually face the chaos. And I do believe that what we're seeing on the national and international scale, in some sense, is reflective of, the stage we're at as individuals collectively processing things. And so I think that not only do we have to face our own inner chaos, but as we're facing the external chaos, we need to process it in a certain way so that we can effectively change in a positive way the global scene.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you. And I think that, everything is a microcosm or a macrocosm of something else, right? It's all fractal, so it all scales up. So the internal chaos that I may be going through in my own experience is absolutely reflected on a larger scale, whether it's in my community, my city, my town, my country, my planet. We're seeing this mirrored back to us. And it's, it really is an opportunity to say, wait a minute, there's a connection here. This isn't just happening to me, and this isn't just happening on some far removed thing where I can say, oh, it's in D.C. or it's in, Paris or it's in Berlin or wherever. But it really is, we are being given the opportunity to get very clear with ourselves, because in order, the way that I look at it is the external world is the secondary reality, and the internal world is the primary one.
Ooh, I like
and in order to create a shift in the secondary world, I must create a shift in the primary one first.
Right. And
so the same. Sorry, go ahead.
And along the way, you were talking about the fractal aspects of reality. Can you share with our listeners a little bit more about that?
I really do believe that, fractal expressions and geometry are the building blocks of the universe and of our experience.
Amen to that.
I have always said that science and spirit, we're moving in the same direction.
Yes.
And I think we're seeing more and more through all these scientific discoveries that are happening on quantum levels, and now these amazing things. And that, I don't know if you read the article about the Chinese scientists who have created a teleported link from, a space station, from the Earth to a space station. So we're starting to see these concepts that, I always sort of joke when I see these things and I say, oh, well, welcome to the party, science. We knew you'd get here eventually.
Right,
we're talking, we always talk about these things, but science and spirit are moving in the same direction. And I think more and more now we're seeing that we're just two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. And I think that geometry is the building blocks of it all, is really how I see it.
Right. And as somebody who's been the co-creator of a couple of different energetic activations that really, when you put all the pieces together, create this beautiful, sacred geometric structure. It's like the information I've gotten intuitively has been that, yes, it's kind of like the geometry is the building block of all life, including our spiritual life, including our physical reality. And so, and the fractal aspects that I think are so important is this concept of things, continue in the sort of the same pattern, both outward, like a tree that branches and branches and branches, but also inward. So it's kind of like this exists on an infinitesimal scale within us, as well as on the macrocosm outside of us. And so there's that connection, that geometric connection, which I think is so important in our co-creations.
Absolutely. And I always say that the only reason any of this exists is because Source seeks expansion through experience, because it is a fractal expression. It's always repeating, it's always recurring, it's always expanding and moving out and out and out. And you're absolutely right. You look at the fractal divisions on tree branches, it's the same fractal divisions that we see in the in the lungs. Right? You see the nervous system, and these patterns are the same patterns that we see in like rivers and how rivers branch off, and so we see these patterns repeated and recurred over and over and over. It's like literally the answers are right in front of us, and now we're really beginning to pay attention and go, oh my gosh, it's really been in front of my face the whole time. But oftentimes the only way that can be revealed is through chaos, because sometimes it has to fall apart before we pay attention.
Right. So really, it's kind of like there's this, say, a geometric structure on some level. This is a geometric structure that has to get repatterned, perhaps? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think it's, and we see this even in our relationships, right? I mean, I can't tell you the number of times people say, I've dated the same guy for 5 years. It's been a different guy each time, but it was the same guy, right?
Yeah.
Or I've had the same job 100 times. I've worked at 20 different places, but it was the exact same place, the exact same experience, the exact same cast of characters. They just look different.
Right.
And so when life begins to show you the same thing over and over again, it's because there's new information. And you are shifting the shape and the form of it through your awareness and your intention. And when you shift it, you make it more complete and more whole.
Right. I love that. And one of my questions for you after we come back from this break is how the chaos plays into sort of the restructuring of the geometry and the restructuring of our future here on Earth. More with the wonderful Andrew Martin here in just a few moments.
What is a brilliant culture? And how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you design a culture that is authentic, innovative, and successful. Learn how to create change with Cultural Brilliance Radio, the DNA of organizational excellence, and Claudette Rowley. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit ClaudetteRowley.com.
Brand consultant Jen Morgan is here with Radically Distinct Radio to help you take control of your future and maximize your brand's power to produce results. Whether you're an individual trying to reinvent yourself and launch a new venture, or you're an executive trying to reposition your company to modernize your sales and marketing programs, Jen Morgan and the RAD Method empower you to play to your strengths and show up in the world as your most powerful brand. To learn more, go to jenmorgan.com. That's Jen with 2 N's Morgan.com, or call 206-972-5366.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
Gifted intuitive healer and spiritual teacher Sarah Luce brings her unique style to the hit show Small Steps, Big Breakthrough Radio on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in each month as Sarah turns reality on end and shows us how to experience expansive results with simple yet powerful steps. Expect an enlightening bend on what you currently believe is possible. For show details and upcoming topics, visit saraloos.com. That's SARALOOS.com.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. What does the word healing mean? Many think that healing merely means eliminating symptoms. However, based on my many years as a healer, I have a much broader perspective on the word. Healing can manifest in a variety of ways, including having physical problems resolved, becoming more emotionally centered, experiencing better relationships, gaining greater clarity, and feeling more spiritually connected. True healing always includes some level of transformation. Whatever form healing takes, there is one commonality, an improvement in quality of life. To me, the highest form of healing goes beyond aligning with wellness. It comes from recognizing our soul's voice and allowing it to speak through us. And in that sense, don't we all yearn to heal into our wholeness? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW, WBLQ, and Transformation Talk Radio. I'm talking to Andrew Martin here, and Andrew, you know, I'm so fascinated by this topic that you've been focusing on recently, chaos. So does chaos serve a purpose in sort of the restructuring of our reality, and whether we're talking about our personal lives or our external reality of the world?
Yes. And I think, you know, the way that I look at it is that, you know, life, self, God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, is always guiding us. Sometimes it feels like pushing us towards the highest expression of our truth that is present in whatever moment that is.
Right.
And sometimes that truth is very simple and very small, and it's a simple decision. And sometimes that truth is, you know, you've outgrown a job, you've outgrown a relationship, you've outgrown a whatever. And so when something is no longer true for us, it's time for it to fall apart.
Right.
And that structure just cannot hang on. And if we think of it energetically, you know, when I'm at level 5, everything's at level 5. And then if I start to move up to 6 or 7, those things that were built on level 5 energy can't sustain in the level 6 or 7, just to, you know, use this sort of a simple idea.
Right.
So destruction, chaos, and creation are two sides of the same coin. If I want to make an omelet, I've got to break some eggs.
Right.
Right? If I want to build a house, I got to kill some trees. That's just how it is. And so, you know, and it's the scientific idea, you know, matter is not created or destroyed. It is only ever transformed.
Right.
So the energy that keeps a specific structure alive, whether that's a job, a belief, a relationship, an idea, no matter how small or how big that idea, that structure may be, there is an energetic signature to that is geometric. And when we move into a new awareness, when we reach a higher level of truth, our awareness expands and the shape of our awareness changes.
Right.
Right? It's like going from a square to a pentagon, or, you know, a hexagon to a whatever, dodecahedron. So the more complex my understanding becomes, the bigger and more multifaceted my awareness becomes. And so these structures sometimes have to fall apart and be rebuilt in this new level of awareness.
You know, Andrew, not too long ago, I wrote a blog about the sort of the rise of the divine feminine, in a sense, that it's actually, you know, we have to become more adept at letting go and surrendering, because the feminine energy, the divine feminine that's coming in, it's more, in order to receive it, we have to let go. And I think what's happening to many of us is kind of like we're getting, you know, shaken in our boats. We used to be in these power boats, and we would have the navigation system on and know exactly where we were going. And now it's kind of like we don't even have sails half the time, and we're getting tossed about. And I think it's actually creating a lot of inner turmoil for those people, those of us who had gotten to be experts at sort of that outward, you know, flow of the divine masculine in the co-creative abilities. So, what do you say to a person who's in the midst of their own personal chaos, or they're totally affected by the external chaos, when they're having to let go and they don't see don't see the land that they're going to be reaching on the other side of this big, you know, bay of water that's tossing them about?
Right. Well, I think, the way I look at it is there's this fixed state of consciousness or a flow state of consciousness. And the fixed state always says, I'm a hammer, where's the nail? So I think there's a fixed state and a flow state of consciousness. And the fixed state says, I'm a hammer, where's the nail?
Right.
So it's all about looking for a very linear, logical solution.
Uh-huh.
It's always looking for the external thing to fix. And that's a very human, very egoic, and not necessarily a negative sense of the ego, but that's a very human, and really it is a very traditionally masculine perspective.
Right.
The flow state of consciousness, and we need that fixed state because that's how we solve problems and that's how we affect change on the physical level. But now that we're being called to embrace this flow state of consciousness, the flow is completely and totally comfortable in the unknown. The flow state says, I am in the flow. I am the flow. How can I be afraid of what I am? Why, I'm in the river. I'm in the flow, so everything's good.
Uh-huh.
Right? The flow state says sometimes you're the teacher, sometimes you're the student, sometimes you're the catalyst, sometimes you're the reaction. The flow state isn't really interested in the why. The flow state just says, when I get there, I'll know what to do. It's like, last year I was getting this message from my guides, and they kept saying, be like water. And they were saying, water is simultaneously assertive and receptive. When water encounters a boulder in the middle of the river, it doesn't stop and have a nervous breakdown about how is it going to get around the boulder.
Right.
It just flows under it, around it, over it, or through it.
Uh-huh.
It simultaneously embraces, but also does not let that which is in front of it stop it.
Yeah. And I think this is a really powerful concept, Andrew. And yet we're talking about people having their human experience who suddenly either, have, it could be like the sort of the external chaos within their lives. They may be feeling internal chaos. But I think that when we're in the flow, we not only, have to sort of let go of all sorts of things, but we also have to be comfortable with not even necessarily knowing who we are or even what our purpose is.
Yeah. And I think the first thing when things fall apart, because that's the nature of life, is that things fall apart. Mm-hmm. And sometimes things get challenging. I think the first thing we could acknowledge is just because it's falling apart, that's not necessarily evidence that you've done something wrong.
Right.
Right? You graduate from grade 5 to grade 6 because you're ready for the next challenge. Uh-huh. You don't leave grade 5 because you were terrible and you're being kicked out, right? So, and I get it. It's, when it's a big thing, life-changing, I lost my job, my relationship is in shambles, my health is, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's oftentimes we really try to go into that fixed state. Where's the fix? Where's the pill? Where's the solution? Right. And I think the first thing we can do is say, okay, I am uncomfortable. I am afraid. I am unsure. And that is okay. Mm-hmm.
So I know, Andrew, that there are people out there, either overtly or not. They basically think that some of these powerful emotions that we humans can experience, that we may classify as the negative or the less desirable, that somehow we need to transcend that. So in these situations, what are your messages to people experiencing this and facing all sorts of, powerful, somewhat unpleasant emotions?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think the beauty of the human experience is that we create through our emotions. Our emotional, energetic state is actually sort of the raw materials that we use to create from. Ah. And when we have these big explosions of fear or anger or whatever it is, I think what I always say to myself is, Andrew, your triggers are your teachers. They're really here to let me know what parts of myself have I not fully loved? What parts of myself have I not fully accepted as they are? And I'm not saying loved in terms of I can fix you and make you better, just loved as you are.
Yes.
Right? It's okay to be unsure. It's okay to be broken. It's okay to be angry. We came here for a human experience. That's why we are here. So it's not about trying to escape your humanism or, transcend it. It's about trying to be the best version of the human that you can be in any moment. And sometimes that means you got to sit and you got to be sad and you got to be angry.
Right.
The point that I always want to get across is it's okay to be afraid or be sad or be angry, but do your best to feel it, to let it open up within you and then let it go and then choose. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Don't choose or act from fear or anger or sadness. Let it pass through you like a sun across the cloud, a cloud in front of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Let yourself have that moment of darkness and then let it go.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a very scary place for a lot of us because, we are in that fixed mentality like, okay, there are problems here. This feels really unpleasant. How do I fix it? So, what you're saying is that we need to be sort of acquiescing to that flow, which includes not only the energetic flow and the flow of circumstances, but the flow of our emotions.
Yeah.
And allow the flow as opposed to trying to stop it or shift it.
Right, because it's like the surfer. The surfer has equilibrium because she accesses her core.
Uh-huh. Oh, I love that. Say that again. Say that again. I'm sorry. That's a great thing. Say that again, please.
The surfer knows how to ride the chaos because she is connected to her core.
Wow.
She wants the waves. She wants the turbulence. Otherwise, it's a really boring day at sea.
Uh-huh.
So when we remember that discomfort is always pushing us back to the primary reality, which is our internal reality, you are the only one that knows what truth feels like.
Mm.
And when you are in pain and when you are in discomfort, it's generally because on some level you are believing an external truth over your own internal one. And so this chaos or this disruption is pushing us to a place where we are having an opportunity to go back inside and find that center, find that core. Because even in the hardest, most difficult, most challenging moments of our life, oftentimes the only thing we have is that internal refuge.
Right.
Like I personally, not having money over the past 5 years of building my practice, I've had a lot of ups and downs. And I had a big period where I didn't have two nickels to rub together.
Right.
But not having money taught me not to fear not having money.
Wow.
Not having a plan taught me to realize that, I don't need a plan. I am the plan.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And many people will stay stuck in whatever kind of, unpleasant situation for a lot more than 5 years, being stuck for longer. And so when we return after these quick messages, I'm going to want you to share with our listeners how we can actually move through that fear and get unstuck. More with Andrew Martin here in just a few moments.
Do you want to heal your body and mind? Your body has a lot to tell you if you just learn to listen to your intuition. Audrey Michelle, host of Rewired Life Radio, can help you peel away the layers that are holding you back from living your best life. Tune in to Rewired Life Radio. Learn to love, heal, celebrate on Transformation Talk Radio every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Connect with Audrey at audreymichelle.com.
Chris Stanis is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. As a former research statistician, my scientific background is what many would call sensible. For more than a decade now, I have been working in the field of energy medicine, facilitating sessions and teaching around the world. People from the mainstream often ask me, how did a sensible woman like you end up working in such an alternative field? Implicit in their question is the underlying assumption that the field of subtle energy, such as energy healing and intuition, isn't sensible. But I believe it is very sensible. Even scientists are able to measure aspects of this. Approaching life from an energetic perspective brings us new opportunity for healing and transformation. And from a practical standpoint, even if you can't rationally explain how something works, if you experience a shift from it, then doesn't it make it pretty sensible? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Are you ready to stop stress, anxiety, and low self-esteem from running your life? Join award-winning author Dr. Friedemann Schaub for Empowerment Radio and learn breakthrough solutions to switch out of survival mode and approach every day with great ease, joy, and purpose. Tune in the first and third Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific to Empowerment Radio with host Dr. Friedemann Schaub on Transformation Talk Radio. Visit thefearandanxietysolution.com to learn more.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm Christine Upchurch, and we have the wonderful Andrew Martin here. He's an intuitive oracle, and he has just got such great insight. And Andrew, it feels to me like you are just so plugged in with the shift that is underway. And I love to watch your videos. I love to hear your wisdom, and I love to hear your laugh, too. So, you know, I know that you've had to deal with, you know, all sorts of things, including you went through, as you were saying before, like the 5 years of sort of financial struggle. And somehow you turned that from struggle into letting go of the fear and welcoming the flow. How did you do that? And what wisdom do you have to share with our listeners about how to kind of shift their lives in whatever way they're stuck?
That's such a great question. I think, you know, for me, the biggest shift was getting out of my mind and getting into my heart. Ooh. And I know we talk a lot about that in spiritual circles, and it's almost to the point of being a platitude that has sort of lost meaning. But here's what I know to be true, is that the mind is only an archive. The mind is a processor for everything that has happened to you up until this point.
Right.
So it assesses any new experience or any, you know, repeated experience through the lens of what it has occurred before. Uh-huh. So when we're embarking on something new, when we're moving into the uncharted waters, the mind sees that as the danger zone. You know, physical experience of fear doesn't really mean there's necessarily anything to be afraid of. It just means that the mind has a belief about the story or the experience, and so it's creating a fear response to keep us safe in the cave. Mm-hmm, you know, right. The comfort zone is not always comfortable, and the mind doesn't care if the story that you're telling is one where you're unhappy, because it sees stasis and predictability as safe. Right. It doesn't care whether or not you're happy.
Interesting.
So when I started to
I like
realize...
That seems very powerful. It does not care whether or not you are happy.
Yeah. So the comfort zone doesn't mean you're comfortable or happy. It just means that you're telling a story that the mind knows how to tell, front to back, middle to ending, backwards and forwards. It can do it all day long. And that's just the mind doing what it was designed to do, which is keep you safe in the cave.
Right. And I think that for many of us, the mental programming and the reaction of the mind relates to things that happen to us in childhood and perhaps past lives as well, where we learn some sort of survival mechanism, Yeah. And so it's sometimes the fear that gets generated by the mind is a very physical thing because, we were trying to survive at some point. Yeah.
And when you believe from this, that your body and your mind and your emotions and your experiences are all sort of the definition of who you are, and you've forgotten this other truth, which is that you're an infinite, eternal being that came here to have a chapter called Andrew or Bob or Christine or whatever. So it's about balancing those two and understanding that when a fear comes up, so here's how I began to confront my fears, was when a fear came up, rather than resist it, rather than let it be my adversary, rather than even judging myself as good or bad, right or wrong, successful or a failure, I would just become curious about it.
Oh, I like that.
And I would say, okay, fear, what are you here to teach me? Mm-hmm. What do you want me to know? Because I, frankly, am sick and tired. I've been hearing you speak to me for 40-something years now, and I know you have to be at least as sick of hearing that story as I am, right? Of telling that story as I am hearing it. Right. So I really began to understand my fears are here because they have something for me. Right. And the minute that I turn and face them and ask them, it's like a little kid, Mom, what? Nothing. Yes. Just wants your acknowledgement, just wants your attention, just wants to tell you something.
Right.
So when you turn and you face it, and to me the key is becoming, we talked about this a little bit yesterday on the episode on my show, was this idea of neutral curiosity. Be curious about your experience. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be an adversary with your life.
Right.
When you allow yourself to be present, and being present doesn't mean you have to like it. Mm-hmm. Right? But just be aware of this is where I am, because when you resist it, that's another layer of suffering on top of it.
Right. And I think in terms of you talking about a little kid, wanting to get the parents' attention, I think oftentimes with my own processing that it helps me to sort of reparent myself, so to speak. Yeah. Be a kind, loving, as perfect a parent as I can be to myself. And that includes the fears. That includes the feelings of unworthiness. That includes whatever it is that's coming up for me, whether it's, ego-based or spiritual-based. It's, if you want to divide those up, it's like helping to direct from that perfect parent and sort of healing some of the wounds that were created through the less than perfect parenting of, being raised by a human.
Bingo. And you just said such an important thing. And isn't it beautiful how it relates back to our earlier conversation about fractals? It's a fractal expression. Source loves your creator, your God, whatever you call it. Uh-huh. Source loves you unconditionally without question. Right. And now it is your opportunity to love yourself in the same way.
Yes.
It is your opportunity to say, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what you choose, there is nothing you can ever say or do that will place you outside of my love for you. Right. Nothing. So when that fear or that doubt or that insecurity comes up, I don't have to run from it. I can really, draw myself up and really step into my fullness and say, okay, fear, what's the deal? Why are you here?
Right. Yeah. And I think about having parented toddlers. It's like when they're learning to walk, they're going to fall, and sometimes they fall and they hurt themselves. Yeah. And, you can have like a little bit of sense of, oh gosh, that this could be problematic. And yet, it's their natural expansion, and you want to love them and support them and comfort them when they're feeling vulnerable or physically hurt. But, encourage them to continue to grow and to learn to walk and then eventually run.
Exactly. And I think the other thing we can do is disabuse ourselves of this idea that life is always going to be easy, convenient, and comfortable.
Oh, gosh darn, that's not true.
It's just not. There will, of course, be moments of ease, convenience, and comfort. And, of course, when there's that tipping point and you really live from the truth of who you are, things do flow much easier. And even in the difficult times, you still have a sense of flow. And you're like, all right, this is a challenge and I don't like it, but I know it's here for a reason, right? But when we, just like when you're a parent, and I'm not one, so I can only take your word for it, but just like when you're a parent, that part of growing up is, banged knees and broken arms and, broken hearts and tears. And that's just part, we came here as master creators to have the experience of a lifetime. Mm-hmm. We didn't come here for chutes and ladders. Just like the Olympian doesn't show up at the Olympics and she's upset because it's hard, right? This is the greatest athletic competition on the planet. Of course it's going to be a challenge.
Right.
But challenge and difficulty are not the same thing.
And it seems to me that the struggle often comes from the resistance to what is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
but that just adds another layer of suffering on top of a challenging situation.
Yeah, and I think in terms of, you were saying that, we basically can move through these things, but I think there are a lot of people who are on their conscious paths who get stuck in thinking, okay, this thing's here to teach me something and I need to get to the other side of it, as opposed to really fully embracing what is.
Right, because I think the subtext of that is, when people want to know, why is this happening, what is the answer? The subtext of that usually is, how can I fix this or cure this so that it never happens again?
Right.
And that's the fixed state of consciousness. The flow state says sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's a little more challenging. Sometimes it's freezing and cold and uncomfortable, and sometimes it's warm and relaxed and easy. But the one thing that it always comes back to is be the surfer. Find that inner core, because that is always the refuge of truth. And you are the only one that knows what your truth feels like. You're the only one.
Yeah. This is very powerful, and we're going to be going to another quick break. But when we return, Andrew, I'm going to first want you to share with our listeners how they can connect with you, but also start talking about how we go from, dealing with our own stuff to interacting with the world, this chaos we're being confronted with. What's our role and how we can navigate to help shift the world to be a more positive place. More in just a few moments.
I'm Peggy Snow with another Stellar Reflections Minute. Presence, or what we think of as being fully in the moment, is a key element in the process of healing work. As a practitioner facilitating a session, genuine presence takes us out of our heads, where we tend to decide what is and maybe what should be for the client, and moves us into direct experience, where we're available to witness the person in their wholeness. In this receptive realm, our senses are heightened and expanded, allowing us to perceive what's seeking to unfold and to interact in the moment. There's something profoundly powerful that happens when healing is approached in this simple, pure way. Balance can be restored and healing can take place on multiple levels. If you'd like more information about the services we offer at Stellar Reflections, visit us at stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Is traditional medicine not working for you? Do you still feel as if your health isn't 100%? Here at the Holistic Medical Center, Dr. Nushin Darvish and the qualified staff look through the dimensions of wellness and start a healing plan prioritized to your needs. Our physicians assess the whole you until complete health is achieved. Get the help you need by visiting drdarvish.com or call 425-451-0404.
What if your body and mind were the compasses to the secrets, mysteries, and magic of life? Glenna Rice, co-host of The Questionable Parent, is inviting you to access all that is possible. Glenna is a 10-year certified veteran access consciousness facilitator who offers an amazing variety of life-changing classes and workshops. Work with Glenna from anywhere with teleclasses and workshops all over the globe. To learn more and see Glenna's current schedule of events, classes, and workshops, visit glennarice.com.
Have you been seeing numbers like 111 and 222 everywhere you go? Do you feel that the universe may be trying to get your attention, perhaps offering a message of some sort? As it turns out, numerical patterns and certain types of geometry form the very fabric of our reality, from cells under a microscope to the astronomy of our night sky. At Stellar Reflections, we offer special sessions which tap into these patterns, designed specifically to support you on your journey. The 111 and 222 activations are sessions activating new patterns in your energy field, which in turn can help you create new patterns in your life. After just one session with a practitioner, either in person or via distance, clients report gaining greater clarity, becoming more intuitive, and honoring their inner truth as they move forward in their lives. Curious about what these transformational sessions might do for you? Call 425-999-9836 or visit stellarreflections.com. That's stellarreflections.com. Welcome back. You know, Andrew, this hour is flying by. I'm loving my conversation with you, but I want to make sure we have a chance to share with our listeners about how they can connect with you on your website, social media, and what events you have coming up.
Yes. So thelightedones.com is my website, and then that's all my social media, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, The Lighted Ones. I try to keep each social media channel with some unique stuff. So if people subscribe to all three, then they'll get something unique from each one. Or if they're not on social media, they can sign up for my newsletter. Just go to thelightedones.com and click the subscribe tab, and that will keep them up to date with everything that I'm doing and my current video content and all of that. And then I do have also on my website, thelightedones.com/events, hit the events tab. I have a monthly series that I do. It's every Sunday from 12 to 2 Eastern time called the Soul Expansion Series. And every Sunday, it's 2 hours of question and answer, intuitive insight, group discussion, and powerful group work. And everyone gets an MP3 of each session that they sign up for. And it's a beautiful thing because every month is specifically designed to work with the energies that are present. So this month, the theme is the rise of the light. And it's all about creating a space where we can begin to have fun and play with our new abilities of manifestation and creation and really talk about the things that we're talking about in a way that's actual, and how can I change it, how can I shift it, and how can I be a mindful creator of my experience.
That sounds great. And can you please share with our listeners about your exciting new show, when it's on, how people can tune in?
It's a Life Untethered with Andrew Martin. It is the second and fourth Thursday of every month. It's at, 12 o'clock Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. They can go to transformationtalkradio.com and they can listen to the current episode, or they can also find my page there and listen to the archived episodes. And it really is, talking, the foundation of everything I do in my work is all about freedom. So it really is about talking to people from a perspective of, what have they done to access and live freedom in their own life? What can they do from their perspective to share insights and tools and practical ways to do it for other people? Because I really want to just inspire people to really begin to actively recreate and create their lives starting now. So I really intend to give them practical ways to do that.
And I think that's great because we're such freedom seekers as souls in human form. How do we find freedom within chaos?
Is this a 2-hour show?
I wish.
Yeah. I think the first thing, I think it's really what we talked about is, in the beginning, this idea of only you know what truth feels like, and this is the thing, that your truth and your purpose are inextricably linked. Your truth leads you to your purpose. So often people say to me, Andrew, am I on my path? What's my purpose? And I say, well, yeah, if you're alive, you're on your path. So that's the good news. The question then becomes is where in your life have you not really fully stepped into the truth of who you are? And that sometimes requires difficult conversations, challenging choices, decisions that maybe take you away from that comfort zone and move you beyond that. But your truth will always lead you to your purpose. And I think that, if we're talking about how do I enact change or how do I affect change in this world, in this chaotic time, I think that the first answer is always go within and really connect to that truth and ask the question, how can I serve? How can I be a solution? How can I be of assistance? I see it so often we get stuck in this idea of resistance. And resistance is important. When you see, things happening on the world stage that you're not cool with, it is important to rise up and say, there's another way. But to me, resistance must be a path to unity. Otherwise, it's moving us in the wrong direction. And that's the same thing for within. If you find yourself resisting something, become curious about why you're resisting it. And on the other side of that resistance is the reuniting with the self and that truth.
And again, this sort of brings me back to this analogy of parenting. It's kind of like when your child does something wrong. If you are a good, loving parent and you're in your best moment and your child does something that is out of bounds, what you do is you set the boundaries. And if they cross the boundaries again, you actually give them the natural consequences. So when I look at some of the things going on in the external world, I mean, there are a lot of people who want to resist. And there's an aspect of wanting to be informed, wanting to take action. However, if we're pushing against it, it's basically, or shaming it, it's kind of like, instead of just saying in a neutral tone, okay, you've crossed the boundaries, here, we're going to hold you to this, these are the natural consequences, and taking action to help that to happen. And then there's a whole other perspective of the shaming and the bad and we're good and they're bad kind of thing, which is not, a loving way to interact with the world.
Right. And ultimately, We all live on the same planet.
Yeah.
You know, you can't keep pushing people to the edge. They're all going to, and this is where we are right now. The big picture is, how do we create a world where everybody gets a seat at the table? And let my anger, let my frustration, let my fear open up within me and let it go, so then I can ask the questions of, what can I do to shift it? How can I play a part in creating a world where everyone gets a seat at the table? And the answer is never by judging and pointing the finger and saying they're the ones at fault, because that takes us back to that fixed state of consciousness.
Right.
Because no one is enlightened until all of us are enlightened.
Yeah. And I'm thinking back to what you said about being curious about our own personal fear. I've found myself coming to that state of mind a few times with some of the politicians here in the U.S., when they're making certain choices, like, you know, some of the health care, or some people may refer to as death care, some of the very restrictive health care bills that have been like presented to Congress. And it's like, wait a minute, how could these people who are leading this come to this place of, you know, being so disconnected from the love in their hearts? Like, what fear, what pain helped create this? As opposed to thinking, you know, I mean, there are moments when I think, you know, what schmucks, you know, don't you care about the masses? You know, don't you care about people having access to health care? But other times it's kind of like, wow, you know, something must have really happened to them for them to be that disconnected.
Amen. And I think you touched on something really important, especially when it comes to paying attention of what's happening on the world stage, specifically the political one, is this desire to be informed. I think it's important to remember that information and knowledge are not the same thing.
So tell me more about that.
I can have information. I can read a news story or watch something on the news and come to all sorts of conclusions about all these terrible things that may happen as a result of that information. But what do I know? Do I know that that's how it's going to end? Right. No, you don't. Do I know that the big scary monster that I've just been watching on TV is going to come in? No, I don't. Do I know that this bill is going to be passed? No, I don't. Do I know what the outcome is going to be? So it's okay to let yourself take in that information, but balance it again with that core. Get on the surfboard and ask the question, do I know? What do I know for sure? What is true without a doubt in this moment right now?
Yeah. So, you know, I've had a sense of this, and I'm really curious about your sense of this. Do you feel that we are surfing to a really positive shore, or do you think we're going to be crashing and burning?
I believe that we are surfing to a positive shore. I believe that we're actually already on the shore. It's just that there's a lot of chaos and destruction in our wake that still needs to resolve itself. And I think that that's why we're seeing these structures fall, is because they're not built on truth. They're not built on that universal compassion and love. That these things that don't allow everyone at the seat of the table, that's what's being revealed right now. And I also think that that's going to be some pretty choppy surf. But when we remember that there's the internal primary reality and the external secondary reality, and that the only way we ever shift the external is by shifting the primary internal, that's why we're seeing all these things falling apart, is because more and more people every day are waking up and saying, wait a minute, this is not my truth. I no longer support that. So we're withdrawing our energetic support, and that's why it's collapsing.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Wow, this hour has flown by, Andrew. Again, can you share with our listeners how they can connect with you online?
Yes, thelightedones.com is my website, and then it's Facebook and Instagram and YouTube are all the Lighted Ones. I am, until further notice, not taking private clients because I'm working on some new stuff. So the soul expansion calls are a great way to work directly with me. And other than that, they can watch my Facebook Live, and then I always post everything on video on YouTube, all my video content. So there's a million ways if you want to hear more of my voice.
Okay. and see your wonderful face and hear your humor. Yeah. So in, say, 30 seconds or less, do you have a final message for our listeners?
Only you know what truth feels like, and it's important now more than ever to trust that. You are so much more powerful than you have been allowed to believe. And that's what's occurring right now, is we're starting to wake up to the truth. And the few that have deemed themselves the powerful know that. And that's why they're running for the hills. So continue to stand in that truth and create from that truth and ask, how can I serve from my truth?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us here today.
Thank you. It was lovely. Always a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us here today. If you would like to share this show, listen to it again, you can tune in on my website, christine-upchurch.com, and you can also find out about the work that I do. And again, Andrew Martin's website is thelightedones.com. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey. Each week, this show engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information about the transformative healing work of Christine, visit www.stellarreflections.com. And for weekly topics, visit www.transformationtalkradio.com.